Good morning.
My
I
goodness me, you're in a house again.
know.
Still,
Yeah.
is this but
Oh,
still?
and
Is it
Julie's hair has had another blonding. No?
no,
Looking very bright today.
no, I think you'd seen it like this.
Are you using your purple shampoo then?
No,
Oh,
maybe the
well,
light's
looks
different. I
like.
don't know. Maybe it's because the lighter colored jump. I don't know, but no, 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 no.
Yeah.
But you're still in a house. Yes, this is
I'm
much more
back in
important.
house. Yeah, my coolant hose sprung a big hole in it on Sunday, so I can't drive it anywhere. And the garage thought it was going to take them 2 weeks to get a part from Italy, but I managed to find a part in the UK, so it's coming today, and I'm going to fit it myself, hopefully.
Ooh,
Ooh,
look
get
at
you.
you,
But
Jinx.
I'm at my parents' house, so if I get stuck, I'll ask my dad.
It's nice having parents around, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mind you, saying that, I've oh gosh, long story. Why can I never do a simple, quick story, right? I've
We love
decided
your stories,
Not the time for a
Julie.
simple, quick story. You've
they,
got a whole hour, Julie.
they witter, right? I'm no I
No,
witter.
no, 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 no,
Anyway,
no, no, no. My husband.
I've, I've been trying to get more visible, right? Because I feel like I could be doing a lot more than I am doing. I mean,
Mhm.
I teach 20 hours a week, but actually some of those are groups, and if those groups have more people in them, then I'd be doing more. So I'm trying to get more visible. So I decided routine is everything, right? So I've added my comment on social media thing to my before I get out of bed list, right?
Mm.
Consequently, I've not done my meditating today. I've not filled in my schedule for additional schedule. I do half of it last night and half of it this morning. I've only just got my second cup of coffee and I'm all behind, and I haven't done my meditating this morning. But I'm just, what was I saying? I don't even know where that came from. I don't know what I was wittering about.
We started talking about parents, and then you started talking about
There you go. Thank you. So, in the midst of all this, like throwing clothes on in a hurry because I'm going to be late, and oh my goodness, get the coffee machine going while you run upstairs to get dressed to go back down to get the coffee, which probably wastes time going backwards and forwards, but it feels like I'm saving time. My mum rang, which is not a biggie. She rang
Yeah.
from her mobile. She never turns her mobile on. Never. Do not bother trying to ring my mum on her mobile. It is there for her benefit, not anybody else's. So it's only there for her to use if she needs to make a phone call when she's away from home. It
Mm.
won't wait till she gets home. And so I've called her back and it's gone to voicemail. And I've called her back and it's gone back to voicemail. And I've called her back and it's gone to voicemail. So I've rung the home phone and it's
Mm.
gone to the answer machine. I'm thinking, oh my God, what's going on? What's going on? Um, they're just not using the home phone because dad's waiting for an appointment. He's waiting for the hospital to contact him with an appointment. So they're not using the home phone. And mum misdialed me. She was trying to ring her sister. So in the midst of all this, oh my God, I'm running late for everything. And I've not done my meditating. And oh my God, isn't it
You,
showing
you,
because
you
I'm a
think
complete.
your parents are dying or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm like, what's happened now?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it is lovely having parents who can kind of jump in and help you. But you go through stages in life, don't you? You start off as the child and then you're kind of they're equal. And then suddenly they're the child and you're the parent,
Mhm.
as well as your own kids that you're parenting. It's
Well,
just
I'm nursing a very poorly husband at the moment. He's picked up a cold and he's had a major ME crash.
Yeah.
Major, major. He's actually gone sick from work.
Oh,
Oh
wow.
no, not
So he
good.
took yesterday off. He was going to try and do it today. And then last night he said, no, I'm going to give them notice so they can get somebody else in. Because he was supposed to be again driving up to Gloucester straight after leading church on Sunday and then doing a studio producer shift from 2 till 10, staying over and then driving back again.
Mm.
Fourth of 5. But he said, no, not doing it. So I'm very proud of him for taking the initiative and rather than me imposing it on him. So but
so
he's
hard,
so as
isn't it?
well as I've got 5, I would have had 5 back to back, but one has cancelled today, which means I can go to the entire QT parents evening this evening if I want to. Not
If
that
you,
I need any more students, but I'm nosy. I
yeah.
want to see what
Yeah.
goes on.
See, I want to see what it's like, but I've actually got lessons the whole time, which is why I'm not going. But I really want to see what it's like. I did wonder.
Well,
I meant to mention it.
I will report back.
I meant to mention it to Julia. Would it be worth recording it because then parents that can't make it can have a look too. But it would only be kind of like the middle bit, not the breakout bit. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I don't know. that's a way away from me and QT happenings. That's on another side of the office, if you like. Um,
Country, I'd have thought, but yeah.
yeah. Oh, of course, yeah, most of the time. Well, I was going to ask what's on your mind,
Good
but
luck, Elizabeth.
I think
Let
we've
us
done
know
that
how it
bit.
goes.
yeah, I think we've done that. So I guess the next question is, what do you want to talk about today? Is anyone coming with anything?
No.
Right. If not, that's also fine. No,
Are we mindfulness today?
no, we're send
Sorry,
today. It's okay.
with spend. Yeah, I do, but you're going to have to give me a few minutes. I'll be back. Sorry.
That's okay. No worries.
I've been working with a alternative provision student. I've got him twice a week, and they wanted 3 hours a week, which I couldn't fit in. But I've now managed to extend one of the sessions to an hour and a half. So I do an hour on a Monday and an hour and a half on a Thursday. And there's been a bit of confusion about the Zoom link. His mum didn't realise that it was a unique link each time. So last week he'd used the link he already had and ended up in the wrong room, but I sent the link and that was all fine. And we did an hour and a half and it was all good. And then on Monday, same thing happened again. And I saw that he'd gone into the wrong link. So I emailed his mum, sent the link. He joined the Zoom and he lasted about 2 minutes and then went. But apparently he'd been out in the morning, which he doesn't often do, and that had completely wiped him out. And with the feeling stressed about, he didn't like, being in the Zoom call and waiting and getting anxious about all of that.
Yeah.
So, but his mum says everything's okay. It was just that set of circumstances. She now knows that the lesson email she gets from Tutor Cruncher with the link, she has to forward that on to him. Right. So he's got it. So hopefully we're not going to have a rerun of that. But I'm still, we're getting on okay. He's, doing all right as far as I can tell. He's stuck it out for all of the hour on a Monday and an hour and a half on a Thursday. But I'm still finding it really disconcerting working with no camera on.
Right. As in, you have no camera? Or
no, mine's on, which I was surprised about because from reading the
Gumph is a really good word.
Yeah, the Gumph. And about eye contact and that kind of stuff. I was wondering whether I would need to. So I checked with Mum and she said, no, you have your camera on, and if you need to, if Jack asks, then that's fine. But Jack won't have his camera on. And I did wonder whether it was worth mentioning that if they turn self view on, he won't then be seeing himself, and is that the issue? And I'm wondering if it's worth mentioning that to Mum, because it
from having a student in the past where anxiety played quite a large part. I tried that, and it wasn't that that Zoom fatigue that we started talking about during the first lockdown. It wasn't the fact that he was looking at himself, it was the fact that I could see him. That's what the issue was. He didn't want me looking at him. And eventually he decided it would be easier if I was looking at him, because then I could see his nods and his shakes and his like. So it took a long time, and it needed to build up trust first. So yeah, I don't necessarily, suggest it, but I don't think that's necessarily the thing.
Okay.
For some students, it will be that they can see themselves. And quite often, like, I'll turn off self view because by the end of the day, I'm like sick of seeing.
Oh, I have it permanently off.
Oh, I need to have it on to make sure the hair looks good.
And you know what? I've got past caring, Julie.
So yeah. I think, I was talking about this exact challenge in a coaching session I was doing last week with someone else, that, it's one of those things where there are so many reasons why the student may not feel comfortable turning their camera on, and there are so many other things to worry about as a tutor, that it's one of those things. This tutor always says at the end of the session, she always says to her student, "Oh, I really hope to see your face soon." And like that, or I hope I'll see your face in the future, and that's how she leaves it, and that's fine for her. You know, she always,
See, some that would be like,
oh, I agree. Yeah,
poke,
yeah. I
wouldn't
wouldn't
it?
I wouldn't poke the bear personally,
No,
but
No,
I certainly
I,
would.
if I had an issue putting my camera on, that would be the last thing you're leaving me with to think about before my next
I'm not
lesson.
coming back.
Yeah, no, sorry.
No,
My
no,
no, oh,
no,
no.
you don't need to apologize. You're absolutely right. And as always, it's never my job to tell you how to teach.
No.
You're allowed your own opinions. And we did talk a little bit about that. And she was still happy with her practice. That was fine because
Yeah,
she knows
that's
what she's
good.
doing. But yes, I think, you know, you've both identified really clear potential challenges, potential benefits. I think the potential benefits that you get out of having a camera on are small compared to the amount of stress it potentially causes an individual, especially you know, when if they can communicate using the chat and if you can speak to them, you're still getting a lot of information. And the thing that we're still comparing it to is being in a classroom with them where we'd automatically just see them. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they'd feel more comfortable being seen in that situation. It's just that online they have a choice that they don't have in person. But sometimes we see it with the long hair over the face or the hoodie that doesn't want to come down, or there are other behaviors that we see in real life that are similar to not having the camera on. So yeah, potentially mention it to mum, like Julie says, it might not be the problem, but it's, I think I don't need to tell you.
What you could do is the next time you say you have yours on hiding self view all the time, he doesn't know that. You can't tell the difference whether your view is hidden or not. So what you could do is you could go, oh, do you know what? I'm so fit. Do you mind if I'm just going to turn myself off so I don't have to look at myself anymore? Oh, did you know you could do that? That's really weird, isn't it? Technology is great, isn't it? I can actually be on here and you can see me and I can't. I don't use it very often, and you can have like a little mini conversation with yourself, because I don't know if you've noticed, but I do that all the time. And while you're having that mini conversation with yourself, you're letting him know it's there. So you're not suggesting, actually, do you want to do this because it would be easier for me? Here's some more pressure. What you're doing is, did you know this was there? So, and as I say, he doesn't know that you don't have it
that's
on
a really
all
good.
the time.
I like that. Yeah. The other thing I thought of was suggesting to mum that, when the video's turned off, it's unless you put something there, it's just your name. And I was wondering if it was worth suggesting uploading a picture of Jack, so I have an idea what he looks like.
I'd go for avatar rather than picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just if it is that, like, I don't want you looking at me thing, God, it took me ages to put a picture of me on as my profile picture. Don't know if you've noticed, but I've not changed it yet, and I've got beautiful hair now. It just takes, no, that's hard. That would be hard for me. Whereas if you want like a cartoon avatar of me, so you've got a vague idea, that's much easier.
This one was taken 5 years ago at a university
I love
professional
that picture of you.
So do I. When I saw it in they released some photos after the event. It was a teaching and learning training event. And they had a roving photographer. And when I saw that photo, I went, "Oh my goodness! I would pay good money, but I would pay really good money for that picture." So I use it everywhere, and I don't care that it's 5 years old, and because I kind of still look like that. I'm a bit chunkier,
it's
but
still close enough to you. I mean, when I look at my picture now and me, I wouldn't know I was the same person. But I'm making every excuse about not doing it, right? So I need to go and have some headshots done properly, right? But to do that, I need to have the hair looking right. And I don't see ultra picky, right? This bit, oh no, this bit, 'cause it's all mirrored, is actually thicker than this bit. And it's not just that it's parted that way, it's actually not cut straight. right? I love my hairdresser, but she's more concerned about, or has been more concerned about the colour. So the cut's not quite right yet. So I'm like, well, I've got to go and have my next haircut to straighten like that. And then I need to, I can't do it any day. It needs to be a day when A, the hair is behaving itself and it's looking like it's halfway decent. And then B, it's got to be a day where I've got enough time to spend an hour and a half going into town and back again to have the headshots done. And there are a lot of reasons why mine hasn't been updated. And none of them are a good reason at
I
all.
challenge that.
I challenge that as well.
Okay. Okay, if you say so. But
Because
do
you
know
knew,
what I mean? I
you
can always
knew we
cut
were
up an
going to do
excuse
that,
for
Julie.
anything. No, I didn't. See, I spend one of the things I like about this community and others that I'm in are that people like me who go through life going, oh, I'm so rubbish, I'm so ridiculous, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. I told, shut up, yes, you can. Right? I love it. But that doesn't mean that I don't sit here and think, well, I think those stupid excuses.
Yeah, of course, you're allowed to have your own thoughts and feelings, and we're allowed to challenge them too. And that's really nice. And look, we've spent 10 minutes talking about the challenges of having a photo taken, right? Which shows you, just what a big deal it is to people who we relate to, not just random speech. So yeah, I think your suggestion of uploading a picture is really nice, and I would maybe extend it to just a picture that Jack likes. Doesn't have to be a picture of himself, could be a picture of his dog. That's what I'd choose if I didn't want to put a picture of my dog up because he's very cute. Or I might put a picture of a place I like up, or a character I like from a film, or and then you're still learning something about what he's like, and he's sharing something that he gets to choose. And there's kind of a happy compromise between what you want, which is to get to know him, and what he wants, which is not to have his camera on for whatever reason. So there's a way for both of you to have those things without pressing
I think I might have that conversation tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Worth doing.
I encourage you to do so.
I've got to fill the hour and a half with something.
and that's challenging as well, because he finds what the content difficult, or to attend
well
for that difficult.
No, it's he seems to be enjoying the maths. And he's, as well as an ASD diagnosis, there's also a PDA diagnosis there as well, which I've not got much experience of, so I'm treading very carefully about how I suggest things and all that kind of stuff. So I will usually present two options and let him choose what would suit you best to do, kind of thing. And there was it last Thursday he did actually, was it a bit short? And by the time we got to 15 minutes with the end, he said, I've had enough. I said, okay, fine. And we ended it, and that was it.
The fact that you've got warning is incredible.
Yeah. Progress.
That is absolutely brilliant.
Well, I mean, I got no warning Monday, but given what had happened to him, he'd been out, he'd exhausted himself, and then we'd had this stress with being in the wrong room. I'm not surprised that he left without, that's fine. I try, and I did very well in not beating myself up about it much.
Very good.
Much.
Because that can be really hard. Would you like to, have you seen much of the PDA Society's strategy stuff?
The panda stuff? Yeah, I looked at their website. It's really good.
Yeah, it is really good. I've put
wow,
who hasn't seen it before.
It's awesome.
Pathological demand avoidance is basically any demand. So it's not just I want you to do something. It can be, can you choose something? It could be a demand. It's a really, really helpful framework. And actually, this is really, really helpful for just managing challenging behavior, right? Pick your battles, always sensible. Yeah, there are some things that are, if they're enjoying the maths, then the camera is something that we don't need to fight over. If they're sitting in their seat in the classroom, they don't necessarily need to take their coat off. They're in the classroom. Yeah. Adaptation, how can you get around the problem? Yeah, and this plan B thing as well, which we see tutoring is really, really, really good for people with pathological demand avoidance, because we can do what we want, because we are one-to-one. They don't have to do anything, because if they don't want to do something, well, that's fine. We'll do something else and we'll come back to this thing another time. We have much more flexibility in that. The disguising and managing of demands takes a lot of practice. But it is just about framing things in a way that is less demanding, and also sometimes just not giving them a choice, but saying, I think I'd like to do this today. Immediately, there's no demand on them. I mean, there is always demand in the teaching relationship, right? But there is less demand. Yeah, there's always a demand in the situation where you're trying to get them to do something, and it's not even something they don't want to do necessarily. The negotiation and collaboration bit is about working through challenges. Yeah, so there's a listening aspect. If I feel listened to, I'm much less likely to kick off, because I feel understood, right? I know that there's an outlet for my feelings. And so maybe instead of next time, well, you've already seen this happen, instead of just logging off, they've told you that, when they have the mental resources to be able to describe the problem, i.e. they haven't been confused about where they're supposed to be going, they've been waiting in a Zoom room for a long time, blah, 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 blah. They actually do have the capacity to tell you how they feel. And so there's an open door there for having a conversation. And then this anxiety management, which is really, really difficult, because one of the things that you've heard me say before is certainty reduces anxiety. So how do you create certainty without being demanding? That's a really, really, really tough balance. But it is this: treat distress behaviors as panic attacks. I mean, treat any distress behavior with a supportive response, right? And unless there's a risk to health and you need to be more assertive, right? But any kind of challenging behavior, I feel personally, if that's swearing at me, if that's being rude, if that's being dismissive or disengaged, if you can treat that as, you're telling me in your own way, and it's not a way I like, but you're telling me in the only way you know how, that you feel uncomfortable, that I'm going to address that challenge. You're feeling uncomfortable, not you're being rude to me, because actually they'll be less rude to you when they feel comfortable. Yeah. So, and this trust thing, as Julie's already mentioned, is really, I mean, it's important always, but it's especially important, particularly with demand avoidance, particularly with any student who struggles with relationship, so they might have experienced care, a disruptive family life. They've probably, if they've got a tutor, they've probably experienced challenging relationships with teachers in school. So actually learning to trust you, especially if they only see you for a short amount of time a week, a few hours, compared to all the other adults who have influence on them, the amount of time it's going to take you for them to believe, because all the other, or not necessarily all, but some of the other adults who they interact with aren't showing them that adults are trustworthy. It's okay that it takes time to get there. And so you have done a very good thing, Dee, in not beating yourself up about a student, because there are factors beyond your control in that situation. Yeah, the student didn't have the link. The mum wasn't fully informed by, the process of Tutor Cruncher sends you a link for your lesson each week. You need to use that link each week. So all good things. Which leads us really nicely onto this idea that I wanted to come back to. It's one of the things I talk about all the time, and it's this: they can only be what they see. And last time we had one of these sessions, I talked a little bit about challenge and support. And we talked about what challenge means and how it can be an uncomfortable word, and what we think it should look like, and how I think that maybe, I actually don't know the answer to that question, Julie, oppositional defiance disorder. But do you know what?
It sounds to me like we've upgraded it. So I think defiance sounds defiant, whereas demand avoidance sounds more survival. Does that make sense?
So there's
I don't know if it's just new terminology.
it doesn't look like it is new terminology. It looks like they're different. So the pathological bit is important. So oppositional, well, according to Autism Awareness Australia, ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, is a willful choice to disobey. Well,
But they are just being defiant.
I'd
Is
already.
what that's saying.
I mean, I don't like the willful choice bit. I think all behavior is communication, right? So if they are communicating something through their behavior, there's a reason. But anyway, it may be willful, and that's fine. I'm not, and PDA is a crippling inability to comply. So the pathological bit is important.
Yeah.
That children with ODD may respond to consistent behavioral interventions and positive support plans, whereas PDA children do not. But I think that actually is a limiting perspective anyway, because to suggest that children with PDA can't
change
is not not a growth mindset.
Sorry, I sidetracked us again.
No, apology denied. It's interesting and important to know the words that we use when we speak about things.
I'm beginning to feel a little bit attacked here. I'm just going to say. Anyway, but I think we're possibly reaching the limit.
Well,
okay.
I'll bear that in mind. And
so back to challenging. What can be a challenge? And children can only be what they can see.
Yeah, so challenge and support have these two sides, right? And one of the things that we talked about last time was that we're very good at supporting children with special educational needs and disabilities, but we don't always think actively about how we can challenge them. And it's in the challenge, the zone of proximal development, that just outside our comfort zone where learning happens. So we actually have to be challenged to do learning. We have to be challenged to develop. And so we kind of unpacked some of our perceptions about what it means to be challenged, what challenge can look like, and kind of realize that we all already do challenge our students. We just don't always think about it that way. And so I wanted to think about this. They can only be what they see. Now, when I say this, I mean two things. One, I mean, they don't know how to behave unless they've seen a different way to behave, right? So from a behavioral perspective, if a child or a young person is very loud, if they shout a lot, if their instant go-to reaction to anything difficult is rage or crying or shutting down, it's really likely that they're seeing those behaviors elsewhere, or that they're practicing those behaviors and it's getting them the result that they want, and it's not being challenged or developed. And all and any of those things might be true, right? So they can only be what they see means, if they don't know how to behave differently, it's up to us to show them how to behave differently. So responding kindly and calmly to challenge rather than meeting them where they're at. Yeah, we're always trying to de-escalate the situation. And sometimes we will need to raise our voice. Yeah, sometimes it might be the only way to be heard, right? Because we're in a dangerous situation and it's loud and we need them to stop right now or they're going to end up in the road. Yeah. But most of the time, we don't need to be loud. And if we are being loud, we're not being aggressive, right? We're just being loud for the purposes of being heard. So they can only be what they see has a behavioral aspect, but it also has an aspirational aspect, right? If you go to a mainstream school, often you have access to development days. Career development has become a more important part of the curriculum. People come into school, they talk to you about what they do, their interesting jobs, what subjects are involved in that. There's a lot more focus on STEM or STEAM, which includes arts, which I'm obviously thrilled about. So there's this aspirational aspect as well. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen on the community, Georgina posted some stuff in the Send group this week about the statistics for autistic people being underemployed and blah, 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 blah. And we know that disabled people are less likely to be employed than able-bodied people, right? That is a statistical fact. How do we address that balance? Well, lots and lots and lots of different things, including making the environment much, much, much more accessible for people who can't access it at the moment, right? But the other side of that is, how do we show young people where they can go? Do we ever show young people where they can go? are we showing young people role models? That might not be subject appropriate, right? Yeah, the aspirational bit might be the next piece of the puzzle academically. But if we're working in a subject like science, history, music, arts, subjects that are more around people, literature, are we exposing young people to literature by people who are like them or who are not like them? Yeah. So are we giving them ample opportunities to see themselves reflected in the work that they're doing, as well as showing them other people? So if we have students who have a physical disability, do they get to see themselves in their work? If we have students who, I'm obviously white, can I show students that there are Black musicians out there? Can I show students that there are Black classical musicians out there who look like them? Yeah. So it's really, really, really important that we think about this stuff in relation to ourselves as well as our students. So what do we think? Because I've just talked for 6 minutes and that's far too long.
I don't think that's too long at all. We love listening to you, Jack.
Thank you for challenging me.
I'm glad you saw it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think? What ideas popped out in there for you?
What happened there for me is I went off on a couple of different tangents, right?
So what a surprise.
Yeah, I know, who'd have thought, right? One is that there is something on Facebook which I can't find it, it's what I've been doing, frequently posts videos of young children, toddler children who have been taught by emotionally aware parents, the kind of thing where you see the toddler saying, like, I know, I've been told no, they can't do something, and they're going like, I know you don't want me to, but it would be so much better if, because blah blah blah. And these really emotionally aware kids that have got far more emotional intelligence than I have, and they're posting them all the time, but I obviously can't find one right now. And the other thing was that I saw something, again, social media, on LinkedIn this morning, a picture of Suella Braverman. And exactly. And
she's my MP.
The thing underneath was, shouldn't we be asking what it was, a piece about the fact that anti-gay is not a reason for you to be able to claim asylum, right? So anti-gay discrimination wherever you come from is not a good enough reason to claim asylum. And this piece, this comment on LinkedIn was, we should really be asking why she's got these views. What has happened in her childhood that she thinks this is acceptable? And there where I went, sorry.
There where you went.
I've never thought of it as an adult. When I see adults, I don't think, oh my God, if it was in the classroom, I would be thinking, oh, what sort of a home life have you got? But because she's an adult, it just never occurred to me that there could be something there in the background.
And you've heard me say one fact more, OFM. So, a bit more background on Suella Braverman, but she's also, her family were immigrants. I mean, this is why.
So where does this come from?
I know. I mean, why has? I mean, you'd have thought her experiences would have resulted in a different perspective on immigration. But what we're seeing...
Or did she go through so much racism and discrimination that the only way to fight that is to fit in and to be middle-aged white male?
Well, yeah, I mean...
I'm sorry, we've gone completely off topic, but it kind of is relevant.
It is relevant, and it's relevant for a couple of reasons. We're going to go back and then we're going to go forwards again. So we're going to go back to what happens to you, right? Because it's a really, really important question. And there's a book about trauma-informed care with children called What Happened to You? And it's about reframing how we approach children with trauma instead of, why are you being like this? Yeah. Why are you being like this now? To what happened to you? Right. And it's a much more empathetic way of approaching an escalated child You know, and we don't have to ask that question to them straight away, because they might not be able to tell us, right? They might be so dysregulated that they actually need support, right? They need comfort, they need emotional co-regulation, all of those good things that we do with toddlers, exactly like you've seen with these emotionally aware children. Or emotionally articulate children. And then one fact more, if knowing something else about someone would help you understand them, what would it be? And then we get to Suella Braverman, and we assume from our perspective, as you know, from our perspective as we have lived through the world, that what we view as her upbringing should mean that she doesn't think like that. But that only tells us what we think about her experience of her upbringing. It doesn't tell us about her upbringing.
Yeah.
So there's a stopgap where we can either leap from what we know about Suella Braverman to what we think she should be like, right? And we can jump over that gap with assumption, or we can stop and listen to things that are difficult and uncomfortable and engage with that person in a conversation and then listen to what they have to say. And we still might not close the gap, right? But it's really, I think it's really, really important to be careful with assumptions about with assumptions. There you go. That's it. That's the whole sentence. There's no clarification needed, I don't think. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It was, as I say, for me, it was kind of like this little light bulb went, why do I not see it when I see adults? Whereas if it was a child, I would see it. When does a child stop being a child and start being an adult? I don't know.
I must admit, the case that's been going on with the nurse who ended up, I don't know how many, Letby, that was it. And I had this little voice in my head saying to me, what happened to her for her to end up doing this? And I kept saying, yes, she's going to, she's been found guilty. She's going to spend a lot of time in prison. And my next reaction was, I really, really, really hope that once that she's going to be in prison for a very long time. But I really, really want her to get the help she needs to sort this out.
Yeah.
And I must admit that it's only that I would not have had that reaction 2 years ago. But because of the way I've had to reframe the way I look at the world and the way I deal with my students, you said about you didn't think about adults in the same way you do as children, and you're right. And I'm now doing it more with adults than I used to because of the way that I've been kind of re-educated in how to work with young people. And I so wish I could go back to 2004 or 5 when I was doing my 2 years teaching in a secondary school and hating every minute of it and being a complete disaster in a classroom. And with the experiences that I've got now and the skills I've got now and the knowledge I've got now, to have another go at it.
But here you go. This is the closest I can get to challenging you. If you did that, you wouldn't be the you are now.
Yeah, I know.
You might not have the growth that you've got now because you'd have stuck in a classroom.
Oh yeah, it was totally the wrong environment for me. Yeah. Totally the wrong environment for me. Yeah. And I did do 13 years in a classroom, but it was a different kind of classroom with youngsters who are now motivated because of the profession they were in and all the rest of it. I wasn't dealing with 30 children who had to be in a maths lesson. Yeah.
Hey, let's make everyone stay till they're 18. Woo!
I mean, on a completely different tangent, I'm just going to throw this in. The idea of expanding the subject studied post 16, I think, is a brilliant idea. I did a year at high school in the States, and I loved the idea that I was doing a broader range of subjects and not quite such a high level. But, and I'll leave it there, yeah, the implementation needs seriously looking at. Yeah. Sorry, I've gone way off topic now.
I'm going to bring us back.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Jack.
No. You don't need to apologize. because we could absolutely sit and talk about that now, but that isn't really what we're here for today. We're here to talk specifically about SEND. But what we could talk about is why is that? Let me think about a question so it's a good question, not just a question. What one thing about the implementation could be improved to make the greatest gains for the most students? Let me write that down.
In relation to what, sorry?
About the implementation of extending education, English and maths to 18. What one thing could you change, or would you change?
I wouldn't make it English and maths. I would extend the range of subjects, but I would let them choose what they want to do. So I don't think making kids do English and maths, if that's not where they're getting joy from, why make them do it? But I do think a broader, so allowing them not to have to pick 3, but to pick 4 or 5. And I know that you can, I mean, when I went through A levels, you could do something called general studies, which I know I didn't do it, but I never really understood what it was about, and it was a bit too airy-fairy for me, which is why I didn't do it. I wanted to do science where there was a right and a wrong answer, none of this essay writing malarkey. But yeah, just giving students the opportunity to, having done, having had their choices at GCSE, perhaps they want to extend, they want to do more design technology, or they want to do more food, whatever they call the foodie stuff now.
Yeah, food tech.
Food tech, and it is design technology and food technology, isn't it? Yeah. Or some more, or to be able to do history, but not necessarily history A level, just to extend it, to give. Yeah.
But what if they can't read?
Oh.
And then the silence. I like that.
But what if they can't read? Because really that's my understanding is that part of the reason that education has been extended to 18 is to make sure that those children who don't pass their English and maths GCSEs have passed their English and maths GCSEs by the time they're 18. Now, I understand that passing your English and maths GCSE is a different thing to being able to read and being able to use numbers in the real world. But what if they can't read?
If we were to move that endpoint, because at the moment what we've got is we've got an endpoint in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. So if we were to move that endpoint to the end of 18 rather than 16, we would be able to spend longer making sure we've got the basics, right? Whereas at the moment we go, you need to know the basics by 16, and if you can't, we're just going to make you do that test again. We're not actually going to put much effort into helping you achieve that. And if by 17 you're still struggling, we're going to make it functional skills. We're going to call it something different. And then we're still not going to give you an awful lot of effort to help you pass it. We're just going to make you keep taking it until you get it right. Whereas if we were going to say, okay, so we're just going to keep teaching you and we're going to keep pushing you beyond where you are, and at 18 you come out with something, maybe that would work better. But it's this idea of, if you can't do it at 16, you're just going to keep retaking it. And I think that just sets up so many barriers. I've seen it in the classroom as a science teacher. It's like, it doesn't matter, I don't need to retake this if I don't pass it. I know I've got to do science, but I don't need to retake it if I don't pass it.
So
I think it's about reallocating. I mean, we have limited resources. There is only a certain amount of pot of money. And are we using that pot of money in terms of the TAs and whatever other support we've got in the most effective way? And do we actually need to go back and see how we're doing the supporting bit?
I mean, yeah, of course.
I mean, it's fairly obvious, I think.
We're mostly in the room having come away from mainstream education, right? I like to dig under this. I don't need to take it. I don't need to retake it if I don't need to pass it. Because I'm sure that in tutoring that question still comes up, and maybe there isn't as much value in the exams. What does that, what if that's a behavior, yeah, what does that tell you? I don't need to take it if I don't pass it. What does that tell you about the student?
That it's unimportant. It's not necessary. I'm doing it because I'm told to, and I really don't give one.
Right, it's unimportant.
Yeah.
And what can we do to remedy that?
Well, I suppose the stock answer to that is we need to make it relevant to real life.
But yeah, but when
But
I
what does that mean?
answer, yeah.
You know, what does that mean? When I've got a curriculum and I need to teach you that protons, electrons, neutrons, right? When what you really need to know is if your shower doesn't work when you pull the cord, right? And it still doesn't work, then what do I do? I mean, that's what you need to know, isn't it?
Maybe it sounds like that would be useful to you. Yeah.
I had a moment. Oh, sorry, another story. We were about to replace the shower because this is really weird, right? My husband would have his shower and he'd pull it on and press the button and it would work. And he'd turn it off and he'd pull the cord to turn it off. And then I'd go in and I'd pull the cord and I'd press the button and nothing would happen. So I'd press the button to turn it off and I'd pull the cord to turn it off. And then I'd pull the cord to turn it on and I'd press the button and it would come on. So it came on every other time. Right? Really weird. And then one day while I'm using several
Did this happen if you did it the other way around, where you had a shower first and then he did it?
It was every other one. Didn't matter who'd been in it. It was every other one. It worked. And there was one day when I, pulled it, pressed the button, and it didn't work. And I looked up at it and I went, the bit that turns round, attached to the cord in the ceiling, that does the on-off thing, it was too small to be an on-off. It was an on-off button. And so every time we were doing it, there was one of these faces like, now see, this is where the science kind of worked. We'd got to the stage where we were about to replace it. And I said to him, like, actually, what I want you to do is I just want you to have a look. I think there's like 2 switches in there and one of them doesn't work. And he was like, I'm not touching it. It's a shower. I've got Dad round. Parents are great, aren't they? And Dad looked and went, yeah, you need a new switch. A couple of quid.
Yeah.
And it saved us a new shower. But if I hadn't looked up and gone, that doesn't, there was a sciencey thing in there where it was every other one which didn't make sense, right? So that's where science starts working. It's like, think of a possible, think of a hypothesis. What's the possible suggestion for why this isn't working? And then it was the fact that the roundness of it it was too small. So it meant there was more than one switch in there.
Okay. So
I felt brilliant.
Next question. What skills did you really have to use to fix her shower? Let's pretend it's a 6-mark question.
Observation.
It's observation and it's logical deduction. You are unpicking the problem.
Which is something that our students don't have nowadays, do they?
Okay,
They can't
okay,
think
hang on. We've got two things. There must be way more skills than that you had to use to fix your shower. So you used observation, used logical deduction. What else did you do? What else did Julie do?
I want to say resilience, but I don't mean resilience. I mean, we kept trying different things.
Right, so yeah, that's
resilience. I tested it.
Yeah, you kept trying. You tested it, so that's a scientific skill, definitely. Testing.
And you said the words. You said the words.
I feel a bit weird.
You said the words. You formed a hypothesis and you tested it. So which is kind of part of the logical deduction thing. You were trying to reason why it wasn't working. So you tried. So perhaps this is true. And
yeah, so I used this as a kind of science learning-y thing. The next time I had in the classroom someone go, "Oh, we're going to science anyway," I went, "Oh, it saved me 60 quid."
What else did you do in that situation?
The shower situation, or what's the point
in the shower situation? Yeah, there were 2 other people involved.
Collaboration.
You had to collaborate, and in that collaboration, one of those collaboration partners didn't give you the answer you wanted, so you used your reasoning skills to say, actually, based on the information I have, I don't think that answer is satisfactory. I'm going for a second opinion. And you went for a second opinion and you had someone corroborate your answer, and then you went to the shop and bought the thing, and then presumably you had some kind of technical skills, some practical skills to actually do the replacement as well.
I had a daddy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So within that one, and this is where my brain's gone here. You were talking about the curriculum as a barrier to actually viewing science as a useful tool, right? In order to unpick why the curriculum is a barrier, we've gone to what you actually had to do to use science in that situation. And what you had to do to use science in that situation was a load of different soft skills, right, that aren't explicitly described in the curriculum, but are everywhere across the curriculum in all the different subjects.
And
right?
we can model those to our students.
Yes, we can.
Apparently I did it for one of my in-person tutees. That was the feedback I was getting from Mum. And she said it again the other day. She's different because of the things that you talked about and modelled to her in the sessions.
Right. And we talk about this with life skills, right? Whenever we talk about executive function and the challenges that students might have with attending to things, regulating focus, planning, prioritizing, organizing, following instructions, blah, 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 blah. We talk about modeling this to them. When we approach a problem with a student, particularly if it's a mathematical or a multi-step problem in another subject, we would scaffold that. Yeah, here's a sentence in another language, all the different parts of, a verb, an adjective, a pronoun, the noun, the subject, whatever. It's all color coded. Here's a list of verbs. Here's a list of nouns. Here's a list of adjectives. Write your own sentence. Okay, now you've done that. Can you come up with a sentence on your own without looking at all the information that I've just given you? Yeah, we've scaffolded them through that problem. We've scaffolded them through that problem because that's what the curriculum asks us to do, right? They have to be able to produce specific grammar points in the exam to get the marks. In order to get to that point of being able to do that, they have to have observation skills, right? They have to recognize what they're looking at. They have to use logical deduction. They have to be resilient because it's hard. Learning is inherently difficult because we have to be in that zone of proximal development where our feet aren't quite touching the bottom of the pool. Yeah, we're doing something difficult. It's hard. Yeah, we have to test these things. We have to go and check to make sure that what we've done is right. Yeah, it's no good just doing an answer, doing a piece of work, and then we have to go back to it, whether that's proofreading it, whether that's checking that we've answered the question, whether that's fact checking it, making sure that we've actually stated things correctly in the right way to be understood. Yeah, and we have to collaborate. Learning is a collaborative process. There's a reason that research papers are peer reviewed, right? It's not because we love to read each other's work. We do love to read each other's work, yeah, but it is also about making sure that we're in line with the thinking that is happening around us, yeah? Is what I'm saying sensible? Does it make sense to people who believe the same thing as me, right? I.e., people who are experts in my field. What problems do they see with my research paper? And then the next step then is, how could I do that better next time? And then we're back at the start of the loop. Yeah. So all of these things that feel hopeless, that I think sometimes they feel hopeless because they're not explicitly described as our job, right? It's not our job to teach these skills, but it so is our job to teach these skills, right? Because they're fundamentally underneath absolutely everything that we access. So just because a government or an exam paper or blah, 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 blah doesn't tell us explicitly that we need to do those things, we're already doing these things whether we like them or not. And as like the reason CPD is, or one of the reasons CPD is effective, is because when we're thinking about something explicitly, when we're paying more attention to it, we do it better, right? So how can we pay attention to these things when we're teaching? And as with all these sessions, all the training I ever do, none of this is groundbreaking, right? You're not doing this already. There's no way that you're going into a session and not at least using observational skills and encouraging your students to use observational skills, even if you're not calling them that. Yeah, and you can call them what they like. It doesn't matter how you package it. Well, it does to an extent, but you know, I trust you not to package it in a way that is completely unreadable, because then you wouldn't be doing your job as a tutor, right? Yeah. But it doesn't matter whether you call it observational skills or whether you call it your thinking cap, or where, you know, however you describe it to them, it has to be in a way that they can access. Yeah. So that's going to be age appropriate, that's going to be stage appropriate, that's going to be skill-based appropriateness. Yeah. Do they have the skills to be observant? Maybe not. Maybe I'm going to have to model observing. Yeah. So what was my point? What was the yeah, just that when it feels really hopeless, and it often does, I think, you know, we are more prone to hopeless feelings, particularly, maybe I'm projecting, but particularly as people who have, you know, we've done a lot of leaving to get to being tutors. Sometimes we've left education, we've left formal study, we feel like we're on the outside because we're positioned as a service that is outside of mainstream education. Part of that is how we're positioned in the market. Yeah. But we still do integral important things, and just because the curriculum doesn't necessarily describe them doesn't mean that they aren't actually fundamental to everything that the curriculum is expecting us to deliver. There you go.
What a way to end. What a way to end.
Indeed.
Ta-da!
So, is there anything else? 5 minutes. Is there anything else?
I just wish you recorded this, or there was a transcript. Oh, there is a transcript.
There should be a transcript. I'll ask for it. And I'll
Yeah, Fireflies is doing its bit, so
Yeah. I think, considering we've not gone from here to here, right? We've gone from here all the way over here, round there, up there, down there, round there, and we've kind of ended up somewhere over here, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like, let me finish. I feel like I need to apologize for taking us off tangent several times, but I also feel like it was really worthwhile.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
And that was exactly what I was going to say.
Right, because learning isn't linear. And this is another thing that tutors are best, you know, like with the PDA thing earlier, that, you know, we're able to pivot because we're working in small groups, or we're working with an individual. We can actually just meet their needs. And as a class teacher, it's really, how do you meet the needs of 30 individuals in an hour?
You can't.
How do you even get to know them? You know, exactly.
When I do my parent interviews, if ever I get the it's the teacher thing from the student, I'm like, what you need to remember is 30 children. Hand out books, take books in, take a register, get everyone to be quiet. There is no time. It's not that your teacher doesn't want to. It's that your teacher is constrained.
Yeah.
And it's not possible. So I then go on with it. You've heard this before. It doesn't matter whether it's me, the teddy bear, or Einstein, right? The fact that you've got one-to-one and you're prepared to do some work is what makes the difference, right? I keep saying, like, you could replace me with a teddy bear and students would still do well.
Well, I'd argue that last bit is not true, but I appreciate the sentiment, which is that, you know, you're taking the onus on yourself to do some learning outside of the classroom in a much more mathematically you know, balanced equation, where, you know, it's like we can only do what we can do in the time that we have with the resources that we have, right? And that's exactly the same for teachers. You know, they have a fixed amount of time, they have a fixed amount of resources, they also have loads of expectations pulling them in different directions. And of course children don't understand that because they've never had to learn that, and that's completely okay. But yes, and I also think, you know, that is the learning journey isn't A to B. And so, you know, when the curriculum presents it like that and you don't do it like that, that's okay. You know, there's so many ways to get from here to the next town, right? On so many different roads, and all of them are going to take different amounts of time, and I'm going to see different things on the way, and there's going to be different opportunities to stop for different things when I go different ways. I'm still going to end up at the same place, I'm still going to sit the exam, but how I've got there and how many people I've spoken to on the way, that's different. Yeah. Right.
As my art tutor regularly said to me, it's not about the destination, it's always about the journey. Because the destination for all of us is death.
Lovely. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Dee.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, this is
One of my students surprised me because I said something like that to him, and he said, "But Jack, the journey then is the destination." I was like, wise beyond your years, young man. Very good. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The journey is the destination. So yeah, thank you for coming this morning. I'm going to try and get hold of that transcript. I will maybe pull out some highlights and share it on the community.
Please do that. I think there's some absolute nuggets of brilliance in there that need sharing, definitely.
Excellent. I shall say
Can we try not to get too political though?
Political? Have we been political today?
We've not. We've been very careful not to be political.
Yeah.
We may have talked about politics, but we've not talked politics.
And then there's another question that we're not going to get into is it's a bit like challenge, right? What does being political mean? What does challenge mean? And then there's a whole other conversation, which we're not going to have today, but I shall leave you pondering that for the rest of the day. Have a lovely one. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been awesome, as always.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.